The Villain's Demand reviews Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Change is constant. Written by Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz, and art by Dan Duncan.
Hey guys, this is The Villain's Demand. I'm Evan the Great. This is Justin Von Doom, and this is Hero Man. Today we're going to do another comic book review over IDW Publishing's comic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
The book starts off, and it's right before a battle happens with Old Hob and the Ninja Turtles, but you realize there's only 3 turtles there. They start having their little battle, and then at the end of it, it cuts to what Raph's doing. He's the turtle that's not there. He's a loner. He's lost. He doesn't know who he is, where he's from, or anything. And he's just wandering around, and he ends up meeting up with Casey because Casey's dad's beating on him, and he kind of kicks in the door and saves the day and kicks his butt. And then it goes into the turtles have been looking for Raph for however long, like a year and a half.
18 months.
18 months, yeah. And the turtle, Splinter is still like, I know he's alive, we have to do it. The turtles, they're more on the, Splinter just needs to accept the fact that he's dead. We can't find him, we're searching and searching, and they're fed up with it. Because they've never even really met him, so they don't have that connection like Splinter does. So then they agree that they're going to just go out and basically do what they need to do, which is be heroes and kick some bad guy's butt.
Kick some shell.
Kick some shell, yeah. And so in the process, they actually run up on Raph and Casey, who are doing the same thing. They're running around kicking some bad guy butt. And they're doing the same thing, but then they get pinned in by Old Hob and his gang. And Old Hob and his gang start whipping up on Raph and Casey. And then the turtles, who were looking for the Old Hob gang to kick some shell, they happen to show up and finally find Raph, basically by accident, because they decided to change up their strategy for looking for Raph. And that's how it all wraps up when they start fighting the Old Hob, and they get to meet Raph, they get to save him, they meet Casey. And through all this, it's doing flashbacks that we'll get into. The flashbacks are going back to explain how the turtles came to be, how everything played out. So throughout all that, all your flashbacks are happening, and we'll cover that in our review.
Love this book. Currently, with all the books that I've read, this is probably my favorite book out there. Big Ninja Turtles fan. Me and Evan, great Foot Clan symbols on our calves. Absolutely love this book. Not trying to give a lot of it away, but the origin is completely new, completely great. I cannot say enough good things about this book.
Yeah, the book itself it's written by the creator, Kevin Eastman, so that got me wanting to get it. And then when you sit down and you start reading this book, it is so great because all the characters in it, you can just they're very well written. The artwork is, I like the artwork a lot in it too, and it's got multiple covers that you can get. That's really cool. I don't think I've ever seen a book that had as many covers as this one does, and it was just really cool. And the story itself is awesome. To break down a little bit more, when they're fighting Hob and you see the 3 turtles out there, you can tell that they're been trained because they've got better fighting styles. And then whenever you see Raph later on and he's with Casey and he fights his dad, you can tell that Raph is a brawler like he always is, but it's like he has no martial arts style yet. And then after he saves Casey and then they become friends, they decide to go out and fight crime themselves, which I love that duo when they fight crime. It's really cool. And as they're out looking for trouble is whenever they run into the park and Old Hob, like he said. And it's really cool because in the back, we'll talk about the flashbacks a little bit. And in the first flashback, you'll have you see like turtles and they're in an aquarium and they're in a lab, and you see April and Chet there, and April is I can't remember what job she has in there, but she's very fascinated with the turtles. And he tells her that they're just kind of there, and she becomes more, she's checking them out. I guess she likes them a lot more, becoming more interested in it. And as the flashbacks continue, eventually every flashback they do, a lot of it has to take place in that lab. And eventually the Foot Clan shows up to take the mutagen out of the lab, and that's where you have it spill, and the turtles wind up getting in it. And it also gets on a cat, which you're going to find out is Hob. And he grabs one of the turtles, which is Raph, and he's trying to run away, and like Splinter jumps on him and rips out Hob's eye. And I almost like the flashbacks better than the story, and they're both 9 out of 10s to me. but it's awesome. We'll break it down more. I don't want to talk about all the comics. Let these guys kind of get some energy out.
It's funny you said that because my favorite part of the book, which I'll give you all a chance, is the flashbacks.
Yeah.
As a whole, because the flashbacks, without the flashbacks, I think the original story, like if you just took my breakdown and took all the flashbacks out, the story wouldn't have been that good. Because it's just them looking for Raph, them fighting.
You can wrap it up in one issue.
Yeah. But the flashbacks give it meaning, and the fight scenes, they're not lacking. They're almost one-sided. You know, the turtles are they're kicking some shell, and I mean, and so they're all right. But without the flashbacks, the fights have no meaning.
Yeah.
And a fight needs to have a meaning. Otherwise, it's just pointless. And I thought like you were saying, the flashbacks to me are my favorite part because they go into when they first meet April, which the turtles don't have any memory of this.
Yeah, they have no recollection.
Yeah, they haven't been.
Well, that's because
splintered yet.
Yeah, they called it Splinter, which that's where he gets his name.
And that's the rat actually is there, and the Splinter, he got his name like Von Doom was saying.
By the process he went through.
By the process. They were actually trying to split his I guess personality, take away the animal instinct, so he would have room to grow,
making more human.
Making more human. So he was like an extremely intelligent rat, and they couldn't keep him in a cage. He kept breaking out, so they just let him run around the lab freely. And he kind of took to the turtles, and he would like stay on top of the turtles' aquarium and watch them. And April kind of fell for the turtles, but she didn't like Splinter because he was a nasty rat, and she named them all. Splinter already had a name because he was split, so they called him Splinter. And you know, so you get that little bit, and then like Evan was saying, the Foot Clan shows up, and you can see how smart Splinter really is. He can't do anything. He's a rat, so he goes and pulls the fire alarm, letting the cops know. You know, so you find out like, wow, this rat is smart. You know, and so then all that happens. They fall in the alley, and to me, every flashback is that anchor that its corresponding future part needs to make that make sense. And I can't say enough good things about the turtles.
So I'm with these guys. Flashbacks is what makes the story, what makes it great between the current events. Flashbacks, you're getting two stories in one story. And in a way, that's almost like a novel to me, where, you know, big fan of the Dritz Du Erden books written by Ari Salvatore, where, you know, you're getting one thing going on here, and then he's really great at splitting one thing, you know, the other characters off in another direction, which is, you know, you're getting backstory and with current issues. And it's really great because you're really getting to read two different stories at one time. Now, what I really love about this is when you first meet the turtles, obviously, you know, something's up. There's no Raphael. They're all wearing red. Yeah. And if you know your turtles' history, when the turtles were created in 1984, every one of them wore red. There was no orange, no blue, no purple. And I think that's what's great is Kevin Eastman wrote this. Him and Peter Laird created the turtles. And it's almost like I'm going to start them off how I originally started them off all them years ago. They're all wearing red. And the only way you'd be able to tell the difference, and even in some parts, it's even hard to tell the difference in them unless they're carrying their weapons or by color, which in the book their colors don't differentiate much. Yeah. But I mean, and that's what's great about it. It's really almost hard at times to tell them apart except for dialogue.
Yeah, their personalities.
Exactly. But like I said, we're going to talk about this, and I cannot talk about how good this book is. What I think is great about it is Old Hob. He's a brand new character, and God, I wish he was created a long time ago. I think he's great. Later on in the story, man, he becomes awesome. And for the first issue, boom, brand new character, brand new villain, and it's great. I think what makes him great is the flashbacks, which obviously we just brought up, is that let's go ahead and get into the flashbacks here, because, well, obviously we really want to talk about these. Your first flashback is April. She's an intern. She's in college. She's working for Stockgen. She meets Chet, who is like the head of the lab, creating the super soldier mutagen, which, if you're young like we were one day, the ooze. Yeah. And you get a flashback at her and Chet. You can right off the bat tell she's very excited to be there. Chet is very almost nervous in a way. He stutters a lot. Then your next flashback is where the story is really told. She's there one night, and by accident, she sees that the Foot are there. And, like he had said, that's where things get interesting, because then you see how smart Splinter is by what they've done to him. They don't show you what they've done to him in any of the flashbacks, but you get the general idea that it's been a lot because he knows that there's nothing he can do. He doesn't want the turtles to be taken. He hits the fire alarm. And then eventually she lives, but the Foot get away with everything. They take all the turtles, and then he takes off after them, right?
Splinter does.
Yes.
So, your next flashback is him, after the Foot, attacks the Foot, and then they drop the turtles. Turtles are down. They've put the mutagen in the bag, so they're covered in it. He's covered in it. And this is where old Hob shows up. He's just a cat wanting food. He's hungry, starving cat in the city. Grabs up Raphael, which you don't know is Raphael at the time. But a brawl ensues with him and Splinter. To me, this is the reason Splinter walks with a cane. Hob swipes his leg.
And slices him up.
Slices him up good. But these kids, these turtles, you know, these are his sons. Even when he's not even able to speak, he's just that smart. He loves them that much. He fights Hob, takes Hob's eye. Hob's covered in the mutagen from Raphael. The Foot show back up to take the turtles. No, Splinter gets them, drags them, well, 3 of them with the mutagen in a drain.
Yep.
Raphael gets separated. Hob takes off on his own way. Then your next flashback continues with Hob, where Stockman, Baxter Stockman, Chet, and some of the goons, I guess you could say, for Stockgen, are looking for the turtles. They're looking for the mutagen. They find parts of the mutagen, but find no traces of the experiments. Then all of a sudden, Hob, who is he's a full-grown humanoid, walks up with no eye and says that he can find it because they know that they cannot recreate the mutagen. This entire time, you find out that Baxter Stockman has been talking to General Crane, but you haven't seen Crane at the time. And Hobbs, you know, basically they need Splinter's blood to recreate the mutagen. Hobbs says he'll do it, and that's where the book kicks off right back at the beginning. Hobbs has been brawling with the turtles for like the past 15 months, trying to get them and take them to Stockgen. Like I said, it's 2 different stories, and it's beautiful.
Yes, it's so awesome. Like he gives you all the flashbacks, and it starts with Hob, and then you kind of break down where he's fighting the turtles constantly, and then it goes into the Raph and Casey, and I'll explain that a little better. During that scene, basically, you know, Raph's just walking down the road, and he hears somebody yelling and fighting in there, looks in, and Casey and his dad's like beating him because his dad's a drunk, and he's going. I guess Raph might have thought he was going to kill him, and that's when he comes in, and then you kind of see my favorite part. Well, one of my favorite parts of the story is where Raph. Because Raph's always the angriest one, but to me, Raph is almost like the Thing in Marvel Comics. He will protect anybody that's getting hurt or harmed. All the turtles will, but Raph will throw his own body out there faster than anybody, if you ask me. Well, he goes up there and he's going to fight the guy, and he starts to fight him, and Raph just don't kick his ass to be blunt.
No.
He starts to get his ass kicked.
Yeah. If it wasn't for his shell, he would have lost.
And eventually he maneuvered and he took care of the situation. And from that point forward, him and Casey become friends. And like I said earlier, they start fighting crime and everything. And then you go back.
Let's cut you off. I have a question that you brought that up, and I've been wanting to ask this. So, Raph, and he's got no reason to go do this, just hears it, decides to, go, take advantage of this because someone's being beaten on, Do you think that maybe he's done this these last 18 months? Because, he's got amnesia. He doesn't know who he is or anything. So do you think that this entire time... Because, it shows where he's, like, in a dumpster looking for food and whatnot, Do you think that in this 15 months... Because it jumps up to 15 months, it shows you where they're bigger and whatnot. Do you think that he's been doing this for a while now? Just trying to protect just, like, anybody in general,
I think he possibly could be doing this for all these months because he's also the toughest turtle. Yeah, that'd be a good way to get tough, would be doing this.
But see, at the time, he's not the toughest turtle. He's not even really a ninja turtle.
I'm talking about getting beat on.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Do you think maybe he's been doing this?
Yeah.
That's how I take it, that, hey, he's been like, you might see somebody mugging a woman. He might go and beat on these dudes and, do what he can to help. Almost like it's in his DNA, like it's instinct for him.
Yeah, I don't think he was actually looking for.
Yeah, he just
guys
happened
like he
to.
did with Casey.
When they're there, they're there.
But if it happens, it's his moral duty. to
Yeah,
do something
like he
about it.
feels compelled
Because
about it.
he was a decent fighter. I mean, he was losing, but he wasn't doing
Yeah,
that.
I mean, yeah, you could see he knew what he was doing.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I would say he at least a couple times he's
done
fought
it,
in an
yeah.
alley somewhere, at least a couple times.
But continue on, though. I just really wanted to bring that up.
It's from that point forward, you know, he helps him and they go fight crime. And then we're going to go back to where the Turtles, this is kind of what we talked about earlier, Splinter's kind of making them continue to look for Raph because he knows Raph is alive and they're kind of wanting to give up on it because it's been, 18 months. And they're out looking for him and they decide that they're going to take a different path. And they're like, we're just going to do it differently. And
Well, no. Leonardo doesn't want to.
Yeah, oh, yeah, he don't-
It's
yeah.
Michelangelo and Donatello's
Yeah.
idea to
Yeah,
take it.
Leonardo don't want to.
Because he's wanting to
Yeah.
believe that Raph's alive.
And then Donatello which is usually Raph and Leo, but this time it's
I
Donatello
thought they
and
were going to
Raph
throw down.
are fighting like very bad about what needs to be done about it. And then while they're having all their argument and everything's going on there, you go back to Raph and Casey as they're fighting crime. Eventually, it leads them to a park, and that's when they run into Old Hob and the gang out there. And
They're set up.
yes, they're set up, and they start fighting. And here's where I really like it because to pause the story for a minute, the Turtles are not the Turtles without Casey Jones. Period. That's just me. I gotta have him in there.
I don't disagree with
He
that.
is part of their family. He is their brother as well. But I throw it out there. But you get to see him and Raph, and they're going to fight him, and you get to see all his skill a couple times before this. But what he fights with, just everyday common objects.
Yeah, you could see that Casey, like I
And-
referred to with Raph, Casey's been doing this for a long while,
Yeah, Casey mentions it.
Yeah, I mean,
he
he's been
enjoys
doing it,
it. And he actually has a flashback, but it's not a flashback. He just talks about why he doesn't beat his dad up.
Yeah.
Because Raph's like, well, you could take your dad. I've seen you fight. And he's like, well, I promised my mom I would take care of you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, she died of cancer, yeah.
Yeah, so he's
This is his way. This is
he's keeping his
outlet.
promise.
Yeah, this is his outlet.
you know, well, I guess I'm gonna get whooped by my dad today.
Yeah.
I can't do nothing. And then the vent, I guess, in a way,
That's
he
his
goes and
outlet,
beat up
yeah.
other
Yeah.
bad guys. And I thought that was a really good little take on the story.
But it was cool to see him go out and see how he does that, and he's with Raph, and it's almost like Raph was, I wouldn't say learning from him, but he's probably fighting like Casey at some
Yeah.
point.
Well, they're,
Just
they're,
with
they're,
rage
they're
and-
kindred spirits.
Yeah.
with brutal instinct, and Casey is a character. A lot of people don't know. He's at this time he's in high school, I think, and he's a very good.
No, he's in college.
He's in college.
Yeah.
He's a very good hockey player, but he can't play because he can't make the grades. So he's got all this time to just take these beatings and then go out that night and do them. And it's almost like I'm kind of glad that he couldn't get the grades because he makes a perfect character to throw into the Turtles.
Well, Casey Jones needs to be the person everybody in the world should be.
Yeah.
Like when he knows when he sees something wrong going on, and he tries to step in and stop it. In the world today, they do with cyberbullying and bullying. More people need to be like Casey Jones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like when there's trouble brewing and whatnot, you should do the moral thing and jump in and stop it.
Yep. If
You'd be obligated to do
Yes,
it.
I mean because there's not enough kindness in the world.
Then we'll go to where the Turtles are going, Raph and Casey, they wind up going to the park, like I said, and then they start fighting Hob and them, and then the other Turtles show up, and then they see Raph, and they kind of reunite, but when they see Raph, by the time they get there, Hob is fighting Raph, and he's about got
He's
him.
wolfing
He's
Raph.
going to kill him. And then all of a sudden you see, I think, a Shuriken's shooting the Hob's arm,
Yeah, sure.
and you turn around, and you're like, oh, there they are, and then the Turtles are there, Raph's there, and then they fight him off, and then they bring Raph back, reunite him with Splinter, and it's an awesome ending to the story.
I wanted to talk about something that struck home with me, and I think it would with anybody that has brothers or best friends that are like brothers, cousins that are like brothers. Whereas in me and Evan the Great and my cousin, we grew up together, we're real tight, and they're seen on the rooftop where they're debating on should they keep looking for Raph or not. And they're arguing, and their little debate on, well, technically we're not doing what Father says we should do. We're not going against him because we're still looking, we're just doing it in a different way. And then Donatello is using more reason, and that little scene, the way they were debating, I could honestly see me and my family that I grew up with, the one, my brother and my cousin, I could see us having that exact same debate in that exact same way on that rooftop. I thought they did a really good job at that moment you knew they were brothers. They were family. Like the way they interacted and talked and worked off each other on that rooftop, I felt was the perfect, like, I don't even know, the perfect way to show that they are brothers. You know what I mean? Because that's what brothers
fight.
Yeah, that's but they fight like that. And it also, when they get ready to fight, they go at each other. Michelangelo breaks it up, and then they're like, "I'm sorry, you know, blah blah," and that's also how families are. You get so mad, you're ready to fight, but sometimes all it takes is someone else that you consider a brother to step in and be like, "This is dumb. Let's think about it," and it's enough to back you off. Where if it's a total stranger, you're like, "No, get out the way. I'm fixing to whoop this guy."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they did. To me, I thought that touched home with me because I grew up with people around my age that are family that I interacted with the exact same way that Turtles interacted with on this rooftop.
With me for the book, what I think is great is you don't have none of the, well, I should say the two biggest villains for the Ninja Turtles, which are Shredder and Krang. You hear Krang in the conversations with Stockman, which Stockman is a Ninja Turtle villain. I would say maybe overall he might be like the 4th or 5th, but he's definitely not in the top 3. But he's still important, especially the story, because he's the guy who's created the mutagen in this story. And I really think for not having Krang or Shredder in this book really sells itself with Old Hob. I mean, I can't even talk enough about Old Hob. I really like his character. But I think that Waltz and Eastman did a really good job of drawing you into this book, recreating the Turtles without having either one other main villains or really April being involved in the main story, because all she's in is in the flashbacks.
Yeah.
And it's told really, really well, because usually in the Turtles, you get April with the Turtles before you even get Casey Jones.
Yeah.
And then it was nice to build the soldiers of the team without the brains, because basically that's what April winds up being to a point. You know, she's behind the scenes and not involved. And it's nice to see that. It's, like I said, this book is a very different take. This is probably my favorite origin of the Ninja Turtles, and it's really good.
It is really good. When Old Hob shows up in the alley and talks to Stockman, like, "I'll find Splinter," did any of y'all think, why don't they just take Old Hob? He's obviously affected by the mutagen.
That's actually, I didn't think about that. That's a really good point.
And they're like, "Yeah, we'll work with you," and they never, and the first thing I thought was like, I thought Old Hob, when he first showed up, I'm like, oh crap, you know, this is why he hates them so much, because maybe they grabbed him and experimented on him and he got away, and he blames them for affecting him with, you know, the mutagen. But they don't. They just strike a deal with him. And I thought that was odd, because it's obvious that a 6'5" cat is talking to me. You know, he's affected. You know, they didn't.
Go ahead.
I think the reason that's not probably what the angle they went is because even though he's affected too, they had the Turtles probably since they've been born in their lab the whole time until they left.
Well, yeah, it's
so
different experiments.
They probably have vital signs and characteristics and all that of them already, and you have no idea about this cat.
Because you think, you know, like he brought up with Splinter being a different experiment from the Turtles, you know, so his blood would obviously...
And I can't remember... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
If Hob told him that he was mutated like that, because they probably don't know he was...
No, I think he gathers it, because they're like, wow, look how big he is.
Yeah.
Because that's what they were... I don't know if that's what they were... They weren't shooting for animals being that big, but the physique, you know.
Yeah.
It's super, so Captain America, basically. Yes. But, shit, what the fuck was I saying? You cut me off, and now I don't remember. Oh, yeah, Splinter.
Yeah, Splinter.
Splinter's DNA, it's completely different from Hobbs.
Yeah.
It's like you said, you know, where they were splitting his cells, you know, hence his name. So, yeah, they need Splinter for more than just the mutagen itself, but for the rest of the experiments that were brought up, performed on him.
That's what made him more human, but I thought the Foot stole all that, because isn't that why the Turtles are able to talk and be more human too? The mutagen made them mutant Ninja Turtles, you know, super soldiers, but whatever Splinter was affected would have to affect them too, because they're very human in their thoughts and their talk.
That's one thing I was going to bring up, is because, you know, how do they talk? Because, okay, you assume they've been experimented on while in Stockgen. So I assume it's just like Splinter in a sense, where they've done all these more experiments on Splinter, right?
Yeah.
So I would assume that though he can't talk, it's the mutagen is what allows him to talk. So he understands language, because it's obvious just by what's going on with April and Chet and him being in there. Now I assume that the Turtles understand language too, because of the experiments they've been on. Because at first, that's what I first thought when I read this. Is like, well, that's kind of strange. And then the more I thought about it, especially when you referred to where they were when they met Hobb and they were talking about needing the DNA. Then that kind of clicked to me like, well, they're hearing, but they can't speak. But once the mutagen hits them, it evolves their vocal cords, their physiology to allow them to speak.
Well, when they
because
fall,
think about it, they got flippers and then they got hands and legs.
Well, when they fall in the sewer, and when they first get up, Splinter gets up and he's thinking, but he says it, and he's like, I just spoke. And he's like, it must have been the mutagen. And then he says something else, and then the turtles are behind him.
And they're huge, because he's unconscious.
And they're trying to talk, and they kind of piece the words together before they actually start talking. So that's to answer your question, that's the only little bit they give you on how they were able to talk.
Yeah.
You know, it was the mutagen, and it hints that Splinter could already understand words and like think words. He just couldn't get them to come out. And then it hints that the turtles, they maybe could hear them, but they didn't really think in words because they were having a hard time saying them. You know what I mean? They had to put it together almost like a baby would.
Yeah.
And so that's the only little tidbit that they give you on that part of it.
Well, you don't really, with the history of the turtles and you knowing about the mutagen, and it's something that you don't really need to elaborate on because it's something that's been told over and over and over.
I personally, I mean, that's just a small little detail that I'm okay with overlooking.
Speaking of small little details that we have overlooked, it's funny, and which I thought was hilarious, probably the funniest part of the book, is when Raphael's looking through the trash and he finds a shirt.
Oh, yeah.
And the shirt says cowboy. He's like, huh? What? You know, and I thought that was hilarious because they never say it in the book at all.
He doesn't like it.
He doesn't like it. He's like, that's crap, you know. And speaking of little details.
That's awesome. Another good, strong part about the book is, like we was talking about earlier, is in this book they introduced a new character, an old Hobb. They have Stockgen, and then they have, the lab, the mutagen lab, and you have the turtles and Splinter. And that's all the first 4 or 5 issues, or 4 issues that we read is about. And what they do with those characters and the way they mesh them all together is just awesome. And to me, it's like you talked about. You got all the turtles and Casey, and there's your soldiers. And then you got the flashbacks with April O'Neil. And then you got Splinter, which to me, it's always been, Splinter's a badass. But for the most part, him and April's always, to me, the wise ones. The ones trying to talk them.
You see he's a badass in this book because he beats the shit out of old Hobb at the beginning of the book.
He does. But I mean, he's more of the wise. Like, you think about it before you do it. He's always telling them that teaching them the right ways about doing stuff. And him and April's almost like the coaches, or I don't want to call coaches, but the wisdom to their strength, and it pulls them together, and they start gaining their own qualities after this.
Well, these characters have been established for 30 years now. For a revamp of a story, they do a really nice job in 4 issues, bringing those guys together and making it making it real. Just for 4 issues, in 2 different stories, they do a really good job. And that's why I cannot say enough about this book. It's fantastic.
It is a fantastic book. But I thought they played on the fact that people knew they have a history of, like you said, 30 years. They played on that fact because they would give you little stuff to fill in the story that they didn't need to elaborate on.
Yeah, read between the lines. Yeah, read between the lines.
When they first start fighting old Hobb in the very beginning, Splinter's like, nobody dies a day, my sons. And then you know what they stand for. They didn't have to go into that, and then they do a little bit of training. It shows them training. And then you understand how they're able to, why they can fight. But they don't have to elaborate on that stuff. They can work on the key points of the story because their history is already established for years. And they rely on that. So anybody, in all honesty, can pick up this book and read it and understand it because everybody knows who the Turtles are.
Yeah.
And all their stories are fairly close, and their characters are fairly close. So their personalities. So I felt like picking it up and reading it. I just fell right in, and I didn't need all them little details. I'm like, oh, okay, boom, flip it, and then just. To me, I thought they did a great job with that because reading between the lines was so obvious and so well done.
Well, and on top of that, I mean, even if you haven't read it, it's enough to draw you in because there's enough mystery going on behind with Stockman's sitting there and he's on the phone with General Crane. And if you've never read this, you're like, well, who's this? This guy's got to be badass. He's got to be top notch because this guy's building stuff for him, And then they talk about the super soldiers. Well, obviously, this guy's trying to build an army for some odd reason. And then...
Well, Crane's in a war.
Yeah, exactly, And then all of a sudden, these ninjas show up, and you don't know exactly, who they are, but they're obviously after the same stuff that Crane is wanting. And so then there's another mystery there, and that easily draws you in if you've never read any of the Turtle books. And that's what's great is, over the years, the Turtles have been revamped. I think this is like the third, fourth time, if you want to count the shitty live action show that don't ever watch that. And it's nice because you have new fans, even with the new cartoons and then the new horrible movie that come out a couple of years ago. But you get something new, and if you have never read the Turtles, you've got something new there to learn.
Yeah.
And it's nice because, like you said, we're established. We know what's going on. But if you and that's what makes it great. Like you said, you can read between the lines. But if you don't, there's enough mystery in there to draw you in.
Yeah. So what you're saying, even someone completely new, like if someone from an alien planet for some reason doesn't know who the Turtles are, picked this book up and read it, they'd understand. They would
there's enough
get
to
drawn
understand
into
it,
it, and it'd be a good book for them to.
And there's enough mystery there to keep you reading.
And to me, this is the book that if somebody new comes up and like, hey, I want to read comics, what should I read?
This.
I'm going to point them right over here to this book. This book is
Turtles.
It's great because they're not technically superheroes, but they are in a sense. And it's got great, it's got a family involved, it's got action involved, it's got mystery, it's got everything you can actually want. And it's all with turtles. And to me, that's just great. And a part I forgot, which is one of my favorite parts, and also the cheesiest part of the story, is where after April gets attacked by the foot, she goes and puts a flyer up wanting self-defense training for tutoring.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was funny as hell because I'm like, that's so awesome because it basically, that's how they're going to meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But look, we can't say enough about this book. Like I said, in the last couple of years, this is easily top 3 book I've been reading. Love this book. Cannot stop talking about it. I'm further than you've been because I've been, and then you're just now starting to read this. Man, let me tell you, you guys love these first 4 issues. Man, it gets so much better.
Oh yeah.
I like the artwork too.
Yeah, I love the art.
Everything's perfect.
It's got that simple artwork that's done well. It's not like overdone.
Not a lot of hard details,
Yeah, it's not a lot of hard lines and stuff like that. And I thought the artwork almost fit the story.
It reminds me a lot of the old Turtles artwork from the first Mirage book in a way.
Yep.
Like I said, it's not a lot. There's not a lot of heavy details. It's enough to make the characters out, and they looked really great.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of crazy ass shadowing in the colors or anything. It's really, really well done.
Yeah, it's like a simple, well done artwork, and it almost flows, and it flows with the story because the story's not overcomplicated because they rely on the
exactly. Very simple story, easy to follow.
And then I felt like the artwork fit it perfect. And sometimes comics don't have that. The artwork is kind of hard to get a hold of, or the story.
Yeah.
But this one I felt they meshed perfect.
I could not agree anymore.
That's one of the things that I wanted to comment on. But on a side note, for anybody that loves the Turtles and loves tabletop games, the game that I love, HeroClix, is coming out with a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles HeroClix set. So if you like tabletop and you like Turtles, look into it.
Yeah, it's a fun game. I've been playing the game since it come out. These guys followed not too long after me. It's really, really getting popular around the world. Very strategy based. So if you enjoy games like Warhammer, Hordes, War Machines, play it. It's great. But that's about it for our first cover of the Ninja Turtles books. We're the Villains of Man. Justin Von Doom, Hero Man. That's Evan the Great. Watch us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. And remember, the foot is family.